The Pittsburgh Penguins are committed to bringing diversity, equity, and inclusion to not only our organization, but to our entire community, both on and off the ice. Throughout the month of February, we will be celebrating Black History Month with a series of initiatives aimed at representation, identity, and diversity. Join us in growing, educating, and empowering our community. Representation matters.
Thank you so much for joining us today as part of the Pittsburgh Penguins Black History Month programming. I'm Michelle Crecchiolo. I'm the team reporter for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I have to say the Penguins are doing an absolutely incredible job of providing virtual programming that celebrates representation, identity, and diversity for fans, for staff, for partners, for the community, really anyone who wants to join in, which is one of the positives of these virtual platforms. And this event in particular is the one I know I've personally been looking forward to the most. It is the Penguins' third program this month, and it is called Black Women Making an Impact on and Off the Ice. So we have almost 250 people on this WebEx today, and we are so excited to have you all join us for this event, which is going to be amazing. We're going to hear from a panel of NHL, Penguins, and Pittsburgh executives for a conversation around their personal experiences and their pathways to success, and then they're going to answer your questions as well. So I just want to quickly point out where the chat button is. I'm sure most of you are familiar. We've all been doing this for so long now. So I apologize if you are, but if you're not, it should be showing in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, and you will be able to submit live questions throughout the course of the event using that function. And then lastly, before we get started, I just wanted to say this event would not have been possible without the support of Vibrant Pittsburgh. It's a premier economic development organization working to attract, retain, and elevate a diverse regional workforce, and the Penguins are so proud to partner with them to put on this event. So with that, I'm excited to bring on our first speaker, the Penguins Vice President of Communications, Jennifer Bolano Ridgely. And, you know, I truly can't say enough about Jen as both a professional and a person. We would honestly be here all afternoon for me to put into words what she means to me, what she means to the organization, what she means for women and girls everywhere who want to work in sports. So I'll just quickly say, Jen became the first female vice president at the Penguins, which is an incredible achievement. And she earned that because she's smart, she's tough, she's respected, she's just really good at her job, and it is not an easy one. The Penguins are the highest profile team in the league with the highest profile player in Sidney Crosby. And there just never seems to be a dull moment here in Pittsburgh, but she handles it so well while being a great friend, mentor, wife, and mother. So it is an honor to have her here. And with that, Jen, I will toss it over to you for some opening comments.
Well, thank you, Michelle. That was always so nice and humbling, and I appreciate the kind words. Good afternoon, everyone. Like Michelle said, I'm very excited to be here as well. I'm excited for today's panel, and I have to admit that I'm honored to be speaking about this fine group of women. As Michelle mentioned, I am the Vice President of Communications for the Penguins and the first female executive in the team's history. I used to be embarrassed to say that. I was embarrassed for the wrong reasons. I was embarrassed because it felt like bragging, and I didn't think anyone cared. But now here I am in my 16th season with the team, and I take pride in the diversity that I see evolving within the Penguins, the sport of hockey, and the city of Pittsburgh. Today's panel is sure to provide a lot of anecdotes about what it takes to be a woman of influence in male-dominated fields, but it isn't simple to shatter glass ceilings the way this group has. This group has done so with all the usual traits: leadership, dedication, perseverance, and I could go on, but the one quality that they share is that they remain true to themselves. These ladies overcame gender and equality. They did so with grace and conviction, and now they focus time and energy on making sure that others have fair opportunities, no matter their gender, race, or background. There's something to be said for continuing to move barriers for others once you find your own success. And many people settle and focus on their own achievements, but this group of proud Black women doesn't settle. They want good for others, and as you will hear, they're using their experiences to pave the way and pay it forward. I'm proud to know two of these women personally, and I'm thankful for the progress they have made in the sport of hockey. They may not know it, but Kim and Tracey have taught me lessons along the way. They have opened my eyes to things I was ignorant to and made me more aware of everyday behaviors that impact others negatively. And for that, I'm excited to hear the stories and experiences from Sabrina, Toni, and Dena as well. Reading their bios already makes me feel lazy. So I'll turn it back over to Michelle to get started, who I may add is a pioneer in her field within the sport of hockey. She writes and interviews a lot of other females making an impact, but she deserves recognition as well. So I know she'll do a great job today.
Thanks so much, Jen. Awesome stuff. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And with that, we will let you go. And now I would like to introduce our moderator for today's panel, Sabrina Saunders Mosby. And Sabrina currently serves as president and CEO for Vibrant Pittsburgh. She has a broad background of executive leadership experience with a variety of nonprofit organizations and government offices at the local and federal level. She's deeply involved in public service and political and community organizations, serving on numerous nonprofit boards and in a variety of leadership roles. So Sabrina, welcome. It is an honor and a privilege to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Michelle. It's so great to be here and to be asked to moderate this amazing panel discussion today. We are a proud partner with the Pittsburgh Penguins, our member company with Vibrant Pittsburgh. It's going to be a great afternoon.
I know. I'm so excited to hear what everyone has to say, and I know there's a lot to get to with the panel and the Q&A session. So I'm going to hand it over to you because I know everyone else is excited to get started as well. So Sabrina, take it away.
All right, let's get started. So welcome everyone to this afternoon's amazing event, all 250 of you. I'm going to introduce our panel. First, we have a trailblazer and change agent, positively disrupting the financial industry and wide world of sports over her illustrious 30-plus-year career. Well regarded as the resilient and visionary leader, Davis brings change to life through sound strategic planning and strong organizational development. Please help me welcome Kim Davis, Senior Executive Vice President of Social Impact, Growth Initiatives and Legislative Affairs at the National Hockey League. Next, a senior executive with over 20 years of sales, operations, retail, customer experience, and financial services, banking experience. She has diversified her portfolio with work for Walmart, Bank of America, and others. Dena joined Advanced Auto Parts in July of 2017 and has served in her current role of Chief Inclusion and Diversity Officer since October 2020. Help me welcome Dena LaMar. Next, considered one of Comcast's brightest talents, this executive has a storied rise at the company. The first executive to lead both the residential and commercial growth segments of Comcast Cable's division, the first African-American female and millennial to own a P&L within the business division, and one of the first millennials to be promoted to vice president across the enterprise. Help me welcome Toni Murphy, who serves as vice president of sales and marketing at Comcast. Last, but certainly not least, a local news station once called her the daughter of Pittsburgh for her commitment to the advancement of the region. A previously tenured associate professor of law at Duquesne University and director of human resources at People's Gas Company, the civil rights clinic that she leads focuses on providing re-entry assistance to individuals with past criminal backgrounds, and that's opened the doors for many. Tracey provides herself in the region as an encouraging leader who helps to develop all leaders across sector and industry. As someone who Tracey has voluntold a number of times to take leadership roles, I'm excited to welcome our final panelist, Tracey McCants Lewis, the Vice President of Human Resources and Deputy General Counsel for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Hello, ladies.
Hey there. Hi.
It's good to see all of you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. All right, we're going to have some really generative discussion, and I want to jump right in so that we can maximize our time. So I'm going to actually start with an opening question that I'd like for each of you to respond. Tracey, if it's okay, we're going to start with you.
Sure.
So Tracey, were there any motivating factors that contributed to your professional development? And specifically, was there a pivotal moment in your career that helped you achieve the success that you've had?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Dena. I went to law school at night, so I think that moment came for me while I was in law school. I went to law school in the evening. I was married. I had an infant son, And getting a job for me was paramount. That was why I went to law school. And I had a job interview at a law firm to clerk for the summer. And when I walked into that interviewer's office, he immediately hit me with, your last name sounds familiar. And then it was, oh, I know who you are. I know your father. Wow, you're nothing like your father. You're nothing. When your father walks into a room, he commands the presence of the room. He's just such a force. He fills the room up. And I kind of was taken aback. And, I came back with, well, yeah, my father is a big man. He's 6'4". I'm all of 5'3". And, but rest assured, a lot of the qualities that you admire in my father, I have those same qualities. And so we continued the interview, but the interview went downhill from there. There were racist and misogynistic overtones or undertones that surfaced during the interview. And as I sat there listening to this man talk to me, I built up the courage, slightly ended the interview, because I realized if this interview was going like this right now, this is not the place for me, and I'm not the person for you. You don't want me at your law firm, and I probably shouldn't be here at your law firm. And so that day I found my voice, I found my courage. And sometimes when I am the only one in a room, I reflect on that time that I found my courage and I found my voice, and I utilize it often. And so for me, that was a pivotal moment for the rest of my time in law school and throughout my career. I reflect on that, I have a voice and I can use it, and that's what I do.
Thank you so much, Tracey. A great way to get us started. Dena, what about you?
Sure, absolutely. About 3 years, not 3 years ago, about 10 to 15 years ago, I was working with one of the big three automobile companies. And, being the only woman, being the only Black woman, which is, not, pretty uncommon in the corporate space. But there's always team building. And this particular evening, after a very productive meeting, the team building was for all of us to go to a strip club. That's sort of normally and historically what they had done years after year after year. So in that moment, I had to make a decision. Was I going to go along again, because it was team building, or was I going, to stand up and educate a group of very senior men that this is what I was not comfortable doing? I even called mentors and I said, well, hey, should I go? Everybody else is going. And, a very, powerful mentor said, heck no, you can't go, but you do need to document it. So, from that point, I realized that in my career, there were going to be times where I really had to sit back and say, what do I stand for? What do I believe in? And how are my ethics going to play out in my work? And you have to take a stand. And, I kind of gathered my courage and I said, hey, folks, we're in the 2000s. This is not appropriate. And while I would like to participate, in the team building for this evening, that's really not comfortable for me. I think with that decision, I also had to make another decision to say that, hey, this is how the game, was played. And so I was going to have to work additionally hard to ensure that I was able to make those personal connections, since I wasn't able to do that team building. And that set up that, in my mind to do that. So for me, my pivotal decision, and I think everyone will have that moment in their career where they say, well, what I'm being asked to do does not align with my ethics. And I would encourage everybody to take a stand and say, at the end of the day, you've got to look yourself in the mirror and you've got to say, hey, does this make sense for me? And you've got to do the decision and make the decision that works right for you and your ethics.
Absolutely. What a great example of not just knowing who you are, but knowing what you stand for. And, as we transition to Kim, I'm really interested in, over the length of your career, what exactly can you point to as a pivotal moment that's helped you to achieve the wonderful success that you've had?
Thanks, Sabrina. I thought a lot about this, and there have been so many pivotal moments, but I thought about something that happened to me in 1994. I was a promising vice president in financial services. I was working on a new P&L product that was coming to market. And yet I was toiling really at the hands of a leader, a female leader, by the way, who used my ideas and my hard work to elevate herself. And I never got credit for what I was doing. But soon my first real sponsor came along, and he came along from what I think was probably the most unlikely place. At least at that time, it felt like an unlikely place. He had observed me leading a company-wide effort to recruit more talent from historically Black colleges and universities, and he saw something in my leadership in that meeting. And he became my sponsor. And in becoming my sponsor, the first thing he did was to let me know that I was underpaid relative to my peers. I thought I was this big bad vice president, and I realized I was at the bottom of the vice presidential totem pole. He then used his power and his influence to not only get me in his organization, but to, for the next 15 years, ensure that my career flourished. I became the first senior vice president, Black female in the company. And at that moment, I began to understand truly the difference between sponsorship and mentorship. I also understood that all women are not created equally. And just because you work for a woman doesn't mean that she's going to be your biggest supporter. But I vowed that day, to this day, to be a supporter and to always pay it forward for women, particularly women of color.
Wow, Kim, that really does resonate with me. For the better part of my career, many of the sponsors that I've had in my life have also been men, but also women. But it's important to recognize the role that you can play as a leader in an organization and how that really does pay it forward for others that are following. Thanks so much for sharing that. And finally, Toni, I'm excited to hear about the pivotal moments in your career. Can you share with us what came to mind for you?
Yeah, I'll just say first, I think Tracey, Kim, and Dena have they could have summed it up right there, and we can end this conversation, can't we? Because I think we all, on some level, have experienced exactly what they're talking about: the feeling of being small, the feeling of being, as a woman, being put aside, or not having good mentors and sponsors. So I'll just tell you, my pivotal moment career-wise was actually very early on, and I'm going to take a different approach to this. I'll talk about my own understanding of my capability. And, when I started my career on Wall Street, UBS Warburg. I went to college at Princeton, but I didn't study finance. So I decided I wanted to go on to Wall Street. Everyone around me had had gone to school at Northwestern and Dart and all these great financial institutions, and I was at a deficit. But I ended up working in the media department for a gentleman by the name of Jeff Sine, a white gentleman, older white gentleman. And I'll never forget, we were working on projects together, and he would always pile the work on me. And I think at one point we were working on a deal, and it was a Friday night, and I had plans to go out. We work banker's hours. You work every night, every weekend. I said, "Oh, this Friday I'm going out." And then he piled a whole book of stuff on my desk, and I literally broke down crying. And so he said, "Come into my office." And so I said, "Okay, fine." So I walked into his office. I'm bawling, I'm crying, I'm all flustered. And he said, "I hope you understand the reason why I'm giving you all this work. I'm giving you this work so you can get closer to me. You can work on the deals I'm working on. I'm going to give you exposure. I'm going to give you an opportunity to come to the big meetings." And we were working on some really cool and interesting transactions. And his famous words were, "Toni, you're not here to take sides. You're here to take over." And that has been the words I live by. So I've never been shying away from taking on more work or stretch assignments or anything that got me a chance to cozy up to the big boss. I've always been game for it. But that was the lesson I had to go through to see the value. And I obviously went on to get promoted and all those kinds of things. But not only did I learn the business, but I had proximity. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about that today.
Wow, that's powerful, Toni. I'm sure that no one questioned the lineup for today, but if for whatever reason you were wondering why these women were selected to participate, I think you're already finding out. Kim, can you talk a bit about challenge? I'm not going to stay there, but I want us to at least get to deal with this bear first. What have been some of the biggest obstacles that you've had to confront as you're working to advance your career?
Well, it's what we all have experienced, and I call it the triple threat. It is the intersection of gender, race, and ethnicity for women of color that creates a very different lived experience for us, frankly, than white women. And I think one of the first things that I recognized when I was on Wall Street in the late '80s and early '90s was that my white sisters didn't understand those differences, and it was something that was happening across Wall Street. And so it was a group of us, early entrants, women of color, Black women on Wall Street, that came together from across every financial services industry and put together a white paper on the experiences of women of color. And we started by educating white women on the issues, because what we saw happening in companies was that mobility was occurring in middle management positions, but it was happening for white women and not women of color. And so we talked about the ceilings for women of color being the glass ceiling, the cement ceiling, and the titanium ceiling. And that for women of color, the glass ceiling wasn't at the VP level like it was for white women, it was at the associate level. And so the VP level was a cement ceiling for us, and then getting to the C-suite was a titanium ceiling. And just imagine the visual of that, right? I mean, non-porous, you can't see through it. And I think it began to open up opportunities for folks like Toni and others who came behind us in terms of being able to have the kind of sponsor that she just described, who was invested in her career, who understood as a white man that he had to use his privilege and power to ensure that no one questioned her capabilities. And I think we are all better because of that kind of work.
That's so true. Kim, it's heartening to see more corporate leaders committing to improving equality, both through company-wide policies and pledges and what have you. But you're right, many of the programs tend to fall short as it relates to addressing systemic issues and propel white women forward. And so those comments are certainly really important in still today. And so, Dena, you have navigated a variety of different corporate spaces, and I'd be interested in some of the obstacles that you've had to encounter throughout that journey.
Thanks, Sabrina. And Kim, what a very powerful statement about the titanium ceiling. I think for me, the biggest thing was that I felt, I had sort of been told a lie. I had been told that, hey, Dena, if you put your head down, if you just put your head down and perform, you are going to get ahead. And I would, I ran a P&L for years. That's, I'm an operator by nature. And I would just perform. I would be top of the heap, stack ranked. But still, I may have, a boss that said that just wasn't good enough. Until a boss, it was a very hard lesson to me. And he said, Dena, I don't really care what your numbers say. I don't really care that you are top of the company, but you are not winning until I say you are winning. And that was very, tough, but that was a lesson when I had to come back and say, hey, my dad said, Dena, you just perform. And that was not it. And that's when I really began to understand that there are different pivots you have to make in your career. There's an individual contributor where you can just blow the socks off performance. Then there is a manager pivot. So as you move up the level to manager, you manage things. There's a different pivot that you have to do. There's a different amount of performing. How are you managing and leading for your team? Then there's a leader pivot. And as you get to a leader pivot, you're getting to a point in your career where people around you have performed. And so it is an expectation, that you perform. but it's also an expectation around relationships. And then when you pivot and to get into the C-suite, it's a whole nother set of lessons where relationships are the key and the foundation. Because when you look around, everybody can perform. Because if you couldn't perform, you wouldn't be there to begin with. And I think, as Black women, we have to understand, folks will tell you just get in there and you work hard. That is not enough. You've got to look around at those horizontal relationships and understand that not only is it about that you can perform, because they can go get somebody else to perform, but it's do they like you? Do you fit in? Are you bringing your authentic self so that they can get to know you? Because in life, you all know when someone is not being true. You kind of take a back step. So you have to find a delicate balance where not only if you perform, so please don't get that, that's the ticket to play, but you got to get in there and you have to build those relationships and you have to show up fully in order for you to ensure that you make those pivots so that you continue to get to the titanium ceiling and to become, for people like him and others, how we can bust through.
Absolutely. If anyone thought that this was going to be cookie cutter, generic in any way, shape, or form, I think you tuned into the wrong event because this is something that I hope everyone is taking copious notes on, as I am over here. As a matter of fact, I hope that we have this recorded so that we can take this thing on the road. I'm so encouraged by the stories of triumph and of also in the midst of challenge. As I think about challenges, Tracey, is here in Pittsburgh specifically, even the legal field is one of the least diverse spaces that we've encountered through our membership research at Vibrant Pittsburgh. Can you talk about what obstacles you've experienced as it relates to your career journey?
Sure. I think some of the obstacles, I did have opportunity after that job interview that I talked about. I did land at a law firm where I had a wonderful experience, and then had opportunity as well to move through various areas. I did clerk for the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. I think now they are more diverse with regard to some of the clerks that are in the chambers throughout that in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court offices. And then I had opportunity to go to Duquesne Law School, where I spent about 12 years of my career. And so the particular part of the law school that I worked in was the clinical legal education department, where you do have most minorities within law schools work in the clinical legal education department, and women as well. And I don't think, maybe I am a little biased in saying it, but I think those are the hardest working professors in the law school, because you're not just a podium professor. You are a professor that is actually teaching law students, but they're taking on live client cases. So you're supervising students who are working on legal matters under your attorney ID. So it's a lot of work, but I took opportunity with other individuals throughout the country to speak out, to talk about all of the work that's done and the recognition that's needed for people in the clinical legal education field. So I think, on the academic level in the law schools, there was a lot that was needed to be done to diversify the faculty as well as the students. And so those were some of the challenges that I saw, not only for myself, but I think throughout the academy. And I hope it's changing, but there were challenges there to get students of color as well as faculty of color into the academy.
Absolutely. Yeah, still so much more work to be done. As I transition to Toni and invite you to share a bit about the obstacles that you had to confront while advancing in your career, I do want to acknowledge that even when I introduced you, Toni, I mentioned that you were the first African-American woman to lead in a number of spaces in the places that you have worked, but also millennial. And so as we package a number of those things together, can you talk about how that has impacted your the obstacles and also being one or the first or a few individuals in a particular what is considered a marginalized group typically in the corporate space?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that question. In most rooms I walk in, I'm the youngest, I'm the blackest, and I'm the only female. So yes, that's probably true. I'm a triple threat or a triple handicap. I don't know. It's some days I don't know which one is coming at me, to be honest with you. Look, I echo a lot of the things that the women have shared here. What I have learned in how I've navigated is a couple of things. The first is that there's so many rules to how businesses work. There's the written rules, and then there's the unwritten rules. And it's really often, especially when it comes to diversity and whatever version of diversity you have, I find that it's the unwritten rules where our diversity is on full display. And so what I've tried to do in navigating all the places that I've worked is to understand, how do deals get done? How is the game really, really played? I'm going to piggyback on what Dena said about, we put our heads down and we're working hard, yet all these people around us are moving forward. So for example, as a young person, I know when someone says, oh, we like someone with great tenure, that's a bias against me, right? So I've got to understand, when they're saying that, what does that really mean? And how do I counteract that? How do I show up in a way that, even though, yeah, Toni's not been there for 40 years, because I haven't been living 40 years, that I can still have a bite at the apple, right? Or you need someone who's got technical experience, but most women don't work in the technical fields. So how do we counteract that? So to me, I think it comes down to, do you understand how the game is played? Are you watching the people that whoever's making the big decisions, who are they looking to decide when they're making a decision on a hire or a promotion? They're having a conversation with somebody. And are you talking to that person? Are you building advocacy? Are you finding out how you're showing up and getting feedback so that, if there's someone who isn't a big fan of yours, or, you're just making a huge network. So to me, I think it's very complicated. Diversity, I think to Kim's point about being a woman and being Black on top of it, and you have the stereotypes of us being angry. It's just, some days it can be exhausting. But I do think that there are key tools, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but there are some ways to navigate this, as long as you're aware that this is the environment that we're working in. Sabrina, you're on mute.
I'm supposed to be the person that says that. Thank you. So to pull a little bit more out of you, Toni, can you talk a bit about, you went into strategy almost, right? Can you talk about the experiences navigating office politics and culture? As you said that you were almost a triple threat.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna give you a couple things that I've learned, and I want to hear from these women because they know better than I'm taking notes right now. The first thing I would say is I operate by what I call the 60-40 split. 60% of my time doing my job and 40% of my time talking about it. So today, most people network maybe 10% of their day. So they're spending all their time, back again, this whole head down kind of stuff where they're doing all the work, but everybody else is taking credit or telling their story, or right. So I have learned that in every forum that I sit in, I don't sit on calls where I don't have a meaningful role. I don't sit in meetings where I'm just eye candy. I'm looking for opportunities to showcase my value. That's number one. I have an incredible board of directors. At the end of the day, yes, I do wear the badge of Comcast when I go to the supermarket and people ask me about their internet everywhere I go. But at the end of the day, I am the CEO of Me Incorporated, and I have a proud board of directors, and that is people who are truth tellers, people who are advocates, people who are sponsors, and folks who will put their name behind mine. And I also would say my last piece of feedback around navigating is, are you asking the right questions in the room? So when I get to year end, right now we're sort of either in goal setting or year end, most people right now. I always ask the question, am I on the path to promotion? Yes or no? And if they twitch or they kind of, they flinch, then they're giving you information. The question is, are you using it? And I think very often we're asking these nice questions, but we're not asking the questions that make a difference. Like, I want to know, if that job becomes open, are you going to advocate for me? Yes or no? If the answer is no, then tell me why not, and let me have a chance at showing you why. Or guess what? Thank you. I'm gonna go do something else. Or the answer is yes, then great. I want to see you start to put some actions towards helping me get there. And I think if we do those kinds of things, navigating can be a little bit easier. So let me shut up because I want to hear what they have to say.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I saw a lot of head shaking, nodding in agreement. Dena, can you talk a bit about your experience navigating office politics in work environments when you were one or just a few of a particular marginalized group?
Yeah, and Toni, I think you got it. I think you nailed it. I was taking in notes as well. I think, I sort of, very like Toni, 60, 40. And when you show up, you need to show up. A lot of times I hear from folks that say, well, my manager is not supportive. And I learned at an early age, you can't go through your manager, but you can go around your manager. And what I mean by around your manager, build those relationships with those folks. When I go to a meeting, I have already picked out and know who is in that meeting that I want to meet. I know a little bit about them so that I can go up and make those relationships. And I ask, a very important question. And ladies, it is not, will you be my mentor? That is the quickest way to turn people off. It is, can I get 5 to 10 minutes of your time? People are slow to give you 30, but most people will give you 5 to 10 minutes. And ladies, in that 5 to 10 minutes, once you get on that calendar, you show up and you show out. I always come, with a one pager that says, hey, look, this is my resume. This is my performance. You heard me say earlier, you must perform. This is what I want to do. And this is how I think you can help me. I make it easy for them. And then when that way, I don't have to spend my 5 to 10 minutes talking about me. They have it. I can spend the 5 to 10 minutes truly talking about them and learning. And people love to talk about themselves. And by the end of your 5 to 10 minutes, they recognize that, hey, I've not asked you about you. And they will say, hey, can I get another 5 to 10 minutes with you? This time make it 30. I do the same thing. I update them. I know who I want to meet. For example, one time when I was with Walmart, my mentor was the head of the Asian business for China for Walmart, the president. But I really wanted to understand about logistics. He was like, sure, I'll call Tom. Let me, he can have a meeting with you. And after about the third meeting, ladies, you have gone from truly having a mentor to a sponsor. Understand, mentors tell you what to do. Sponsors help you sell you and truly get you to that next level. So I think for that, making sure that I have a group of folks that I have already built a strong relationship and have leverage, their relationship, it helps me. So if I do have a boss that is not, pulling me through. Remember, I'm not going through them, I'm going around them. And anything that said, hey, maybe Dena's aggressive, I'm not really quite sure about that. I have 5 to 10 people around me that says, wow, I've never had that experience with Dena. I've seen her to be this, and that. And that is the way to navigate it. And again, so many women, we don't do that. You have to spend that 40% time being the CEO of you, advocating for you, making those relationships. And that is something that as Black women, we do not do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great comments. I'm going to create space for Tracey and Cam both to talk about navigating office politics throughout your career, but I mean, you're also in positions now where they are predominantly spaces where white men are leading. But before I do that, I just want to remind our audience and participants that you can certainly use the Q&A box to ask any questions that you have, because I'll be transitioning to that space in just a moment. I'll also I'll be looking at some of the questions that were sent in advance as well as potential questions to pull up. But Tracey, what about you, navigating office politics?
First, I just want to start by saying, Toni and Dena, thank you so much for sharing that information. And I was also taking notes, really, really good at it. I think for me, getting into the Penguin, truly an outsider. Again, a law professor coming from academia, a lawyer coming into this space, I was the true outsider. So that was the first the politics I was hit with. You're not one of us. Very well, but it was clearly, I had a lot to learn. There was a steep learning curve with a lot of things. I did not know, lingo. I didn't know some of the Penguins' internal lingo. I don't play hockey. I didn't know the game. I had been to a couple of games and truly enjoyed the sport, but there was a lot of that I had to learn. And so the politics of sitting back and learning, taking opportunity to learn, but also letting the staff, letting others know that I'm willing, to learn. I'm not coming in here that, I'm the lawyer, I know everything, I'm this, I'm that, but having the opportunity for the reciprocal information. Let me learn, but there are things that I can also teach you. So I think bringing a different perspective, bringing a fresh perspective. One thing our CEO said to me when I first got here is, if you agree with everything that I say and just falling in line with everything, I don't need you anymore. Why are you here? I need you here because you're bringing a fresh and a different perspective. And I remember that when I'm sitting in meetings and, something is said and I'm like, that just doesn't sound right, or that really isn't going to fly, because I'm coming from, non-hockey perspective. I'm coming from the perspective of someone who's fresh and new to the organization. And so only just shy of 2 years here. It'll be next Monday that I'll be 2 years here at the Pittsburgh Penguins, and it's been quite a journey, one that I greatly love. There's still that I'm learning about the organization, about my staff, but I think they're still learning about me as well. And so I need to make sure that I am open, willing for them to talk about me, just as I've been willing to learn about them, learn about the organization, learn about
Absolutely. It's interesting to think about the perspective that you have and how valuable that is, especially when that perspective is limited in the leadership space that exists. And so using your platform and your space to shake things up a bit. To transition to Kim, I've mentioned a few different times that your career has significantly probably has seen significant changes in the way that women have been regarded and also have been heard. And I'm wondering, how have things changed as it relates to the strategy required to navigate office politics from your perspective?
Well, I couldn't say it any better than Dena and Toni. It is the playbook for everyone, but particularly women of color. And as they went through the playbook, I was just chuckling and smiling on the inside, because we were talking about these issues literally 35 years ago, and to see these women standing in their power and having the courage and the bravery to speak truth to power it means that we have made a great deal of progress as women of color, and it makes me proud. This whole idea of building your personal brand and your board of directors, it is invaluable. And it's invaluable because you have to know your value both inside and outside of your organization. You have to maintain your marketability, not because you're looking for the next opportunity, but what if the politics change, that you know that your value is valued both inside and outside of the organization. And that's why this board of directors is so critical. What I was able to bring to the NHL was years of finally perfecting it, making so many mistakes and recovering from those mistakes because of having a board of directors and because of having sponsors, and ultimately being able to come to the table valuing my value and knowing exactly what I needed to ask for upon entering. You know, my relationship with Commissioner Bettman started a year before I took the job. I was a consultant to the NHL. And as Tracey says, you have to be clear that your point of view is going to be different and stand in that and be proud of that. And so I came to the executive table knowing that I knew nothing about hockey. I knew nothing about hockey operations and all those elements, but I knew a lot about a bunch of stuff that most of the people around that table didn't know about. And that's been the value. But most importantly, I came in asking the commissioner for what I wanted and making it clear that those conditions had to exist for me to take the role. And that's really empowering. And so we create our own power. You know, often we stand away from power because we think it's something bad. And I think in our community, particularly the Black community, we are raised to be humble and to be polite. And so somehow or another, we confuse that with, you know, I shouldn't be powerful. And I think the greatest lesson we can teach our girls, our Black girls, is that you can be humble and be powerful at the same time. And that to whom much is given, much is required. And so that's where that power and that humility come together. And so it's a great moment to be here with these women and to know that we're making the kind of progress that we're making.
Absolutely. And Kim, I'm going to stay with you for just a moment if you will allow. First and foremost, one of our audience members wanted to know if there was somewhere that they can find that white paper that you mentioned earlier in your comments. And so that's something that I'll talk with you about. I'm not sure if you want to answer it live or if we can send things out afterward. It's up to you.
Yeah, I'm happy to send it out and we can distribute it whatever way we want to.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And so as we dig a little bit deeper into your current professional careers, Kim, I want to point out that last year, the NHL made a commitment to accelerating its inclusion efforts. And I was wondering if you would take some time to discuss how you're working to operationalize diversifying the world of hockey. I know that's a huge question, but what successes can you share with us thus far?
Well, look, it's 3 years since I joined the NHL, and I think that one of the things that I was clear about 3 years ago, and I'm clear about today, is that this work has to be seen as a journey. It's not an event. It's easy for us to get lured into what I call performative diversity, and that is, you know, we do something and we take a victory lap, and it looks good on paper, but it's not sustainable. One of the things that I'm very focused on is this notion of creating movement makers across the league. You know, any sports league is a loosely woven federation of individual and independent operators, owners. And so the influence that the league has is just that, through influence. And so what I've tried to do is to position the league and myself as a trusted advisor to the clubs, providing frameworks and ways in which they can operationalize things that become sustainable over time. And I believe that diversity and inclusion has to be looked at like any other dimension of our business. If you had a technology problem, how would you solve it? Right? If you had a sales problem, how would you solve it? If you have an inclusion problem, you solve it through frameworks. And so we've begun to put together a framework, 7 dimensions that we know if we pull the levers of those dimensions over the course of the next 5, 10, 20 years, we're going to see substantial change. Those dimensions go from leadership to education, to marketing, to partnerships, to participation. The ways in which we're going to change this game is by having all boats lifted. And the way we're going to get more kids of color in the sport is to make it more culturally available. We often talk about the limitations of hockey being cost. And my response is there are a lot of affluent people of color out there. Why aren't they consuming the game? And the answer to that is because we haven't made the sport culturally available, particularly for the younger generations. And so it's speaking truth. It's laying it on the line. It's refuting those that want it to be an event and not a journey. It's calling performative diversity just that, performative diversity, and putting your shoulder to the wheel and grinding it out. And that's the approach we're taking.
Yes, 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 yes. Thank you. Tracey, can we focus specifically on Southwestern Pennsylvania for a moment?
Yes, and you see the leadership we have from the NHL, that we're trying to replicate here in Pittsburgh. And so Kim has created that framework that we are getting here. We've had the opportunity recently to create our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council that is led by my colleagues, Dena Morrow and Caitlin Donahoe. And so, as Kim said, we didn't want to do anything performative. We took our time, and there may have been some in the community that were like, well, what are the Penguins doing? We are taking our time to make sure that we're putting together diversity, equity, and inclusion programming, changing the way that our staff looks, having opportunity to have more inclusion and diversity within our staff, but that takes time. We didn't want to just go out there in a reactionary mode and put something in place that could just be a one-time thing. So we've taken our time to put these things together. So we have, again, our internal Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council that's doing programming within our space here in the offices. And then we have off-ice programs that we're doing. Last year for Black History, we had an opportunity to do Black Hockey History Day. It was the first time the Penguins had done something like that. And it was a great event. We had a multi-day event. We had Black women that came in from all across the country through an organization called Black Girl Hockey Club. We worked with the National Hockey League. And, it was that event, but we knew that this was something that is going to become an annual event. And then COVID came, so we took opportunity to do this. And we're going to have 4 straight weeks of programming, both in the community as well as for our staff. So again, we're taking the opportunity to make sure our staff is also included. But I think the most important thing with regard to our effort for diversity and inclusion is that we have support from the very top. Our CEO, David Morehouse, is the primary driving force behind a lot of things. It's coming from the top down. He's a member of the DEI Council. He comes and he participates with the work that we're doing. I think some of the challenges that have been seen within the organization, there was work that the Penguins were doing before, but it wasn't celebrated. They weren't celebrating it, talking about it themselves. But I think through Delvina, our Director of Strategic and Community Initiatives, we're getting the word out. People in the community are seeing what the Penguins are doing for the community, what type of work we bring to them, what type of opportunities we bring. Kim talked about, getting hockey to Black youth. We do have Black youth that have the economic means to play hockey, and some that do not. We need to level the playing field, but most importantly, we need to make sure that playing hockey for a child of color is a welcoming space, a welcoming environment. And so we have created some programming here that we're going to be unveiling with our foundation. We're going to provide support for children that look like Black and Brown children to know that they have someone else that looks like them that can support them. They can also support their parents to give them all of the things that they need to independent opportunities. So again, it's not just people saying we know and we're giving this to you, but allowing a space, a place for support to allow parents and children to be able to experience hockey.
Thank you. Thank you, Tracey. And I don't know where the time has gone, ladies, but it looks like we are just at the end of our programming. But before we close out, I wanted to, if possible, leave the last words to Dena and Toni. If I may, what advice would you have for young women about advancing in the workforce? I'm going to start with Dena.
Thank you. Well, this has been, just a phenomenal afternoon and just, humbled to be a part. So I would just, leave everyone with, really, sort of four, key things. I would say, number one, you got to perform. That is, as I said earlier, the ticket to play. And if you are not performing, then you really have not earned the right to raise your hand and ask someone to mentor you and to expend their political capital to advance your career. So I would say number one, you have to perform. Number two, you need P&L and people experience. While my current role is the Chief Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Officer, I have been a proud P&L and people girl, for over 20 years, leading, billion-dollar, multi-million-dollar businesses. That if you take a look at any type of advancing track, everyone has P&L and people experience. And look for those opportunities, to get that. You have to get out of administration and have to get out of sort of those jobs that are the first to be cut if you want to advance in corporate America. Next, I would say you have to play with others. Let others get to know you. I think when I started my career, I know my mom and my father say, don't tell nobody your business. You just show up and you just got to go to work. But my career really began to take off when I began to bring more of Dena to work. I let them hear about, funny stories, about our daughter Kennedy, funny stories about, what my husband Marty and I would do at home. Play with others, allow people to get to know you. Those water cooler conversations, matter. And last, what you've heard on this call really is sponsorship. I mean, mentors sort of tell you, sponsors sell you. Strategically decide who you want to align yourself and spend the time allow them to get to know you, but also allow them to get to know you, and you allow to get to know them so that they are comfortable in those closed door rooms when those decisions are made, and they are confident that if they expend their political capital, that they will get paid back on that. So I would say perform, P&L experience, play with others, and sponsorship is critical. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. And Toni.
I'm gonna put a bow on this. First, let me just say this. Dena and Tracey are amazing, beautiful women. I'm so proud to call them my generational colleagues. And in our community, we call Kim the queen, okay? Yeah. She dropped all sorts of knowledge. There's so much I'm going to take away from the cultural authority. All of that was just perfection. Let me just say this, my closing comment. When you hear the word diversity, put the word difference behind it. Those are equivalent to me. So instead of saying a diversity is less than, no, diversity is actually greater than, because it actually brings a meaning of bringing difference into the room. I think the one thing I would tell all women, all girls, is to be proud of your difference. Be proud of bring your difference forward. Your hair, your style, Kennedy, whatever it makes you different, bring it forward. Give them a taste of who you are. It will propel you forward. It will give you reasons for them to listen and to engage with you. I thank you for the time. This has been fantastic.
Thank you so much. And I'm so glad that Vibrant Pittsburgh was a part of this amazing program. Thank you, ladies. Michelle.
Thanks so much, Sabrina. I think that was a perfect question to end on for what was an amazing panel. I know I speak for everyone when I say it was truly an honor to hear all of your personal experiences and perspectives, and it was encouraging and inspiring. I really loved, Kim, what you had to say about how you can be humble and powerful at the same time. I saw, some fist pumping for that one there. So you're all truly champions of change and unity who are clearing pathways for the next generation of leaders. So we're also grateful you were able to join us today for the panel. I'd like to start by thanking Sabrina Saunders Mosby, the president and CEO of Vibrant Pittsburgh, who did a fantastic job of moderating this panel. And thank you to Kim Davis, the NHL Executive Vice President of Social Impact, Growth Initiatives, and Legislative Affairs. And thank you to our own Tracey McCants Lewis, the Penguins Vice President of Human Resources and Deputy General Counsel. And thank you to Dena LaMar, Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer for Advanced Auto Parts. And last but not least, thank you to Toni Murphy, Senior Vice President of Comcast Keystone Region. And just a reminder, their bios can be found on the Black Hockey History Month webpage on the Penguins website to learn more about these amazing women. So with that, I'd like to bring in Delvina Morrow, who is the Penguins Director of Strategic and Community Initiatives. And she is going to talk about next week's event, which is our 4th program this month. Delvina, hi, how are you?
I'm just blown away by today's conversation. This was amazing. Like everyone else, I've been taking notes and I'm so excited to start to apply some of those gems to my day to day. So thank you to everyone. This is amazing.
Absolutely. And now I know you're going to tell us some more about what we have next on the slate. So with that, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. So we have our final event as a part of our Black History Month programs coming up next Wednesday, February 24th at 6:30 p.m. This virtual program will take place at the August Wilson African American Cultural Center in Pittsburgh virtually for a conversation on identity featuring an on-site performance by the Hill Dance Academy Theater and a cooking demonstration piece of traditional African American cuisine. There will also be a conversation on identity with our very own Pittsburgh Penguins executive and native Tracey McCants Lewis, alongside Kimberly Ellis, who is the niece of the late August Wilson, and she is also a scholar of American and Africana Studies, an award-winning performance artist, activist, dancer, entrepreneur, and so much more. So we hope to see you all next week for our last program, and thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Delvina. For all of you that are on this call, Delvina has done an absolutely incredible job of spearheading all of the Penguins programming this month and planning events that can reach so many people, not just in Pittsburgh, but outside of Pittsburgh as well to celebrate Black History Month. So for more information on the event Delvina talked about and all the other programming that the Penguins are putting together this month in support of Black History Month, please visit pittsburghpenguins.com and also keep an eye on your inbox as well, since we'll be sending a sort of wrap up of today's event along with the details on the next event. And I was told we can include that white paper Kim mentioned in that email. So just keep an eye out for that. It should be coming here shortly. So with that, I'd like to say thank you so much again to everyone that took part in the Black Women Making an Impact on and off the ice event this afternoon, our amazing panel of women, our moderator Sabrina, Jen Bolano Ridgely, and to our whole audience. Hope everyone's staying safe and staying warm, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.